Captain Elias Ward adjusted the controls of his small exploration shuttle, feeling the gentle hum of the engines vibrate beneath his palms. Scifi, the jungle planet that lay before him, stretched endlessly, a swirl of green, gold, and iridescent blue illuminated by the light of a twin sun system. He had visited many planets in his career as a human explorer, but Scifi's wild beauty was unlike anything he had seen before. The dense foliage waved in invisible currents of air, and the distant calls of strange creatures echoed through the trees. "Captain, sensors are picking up life forms," said Lieutenant Mara Chen, his communications officer. Her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "Most appear non-hostile, but one signature is unusual. It's very small and moving fast." Elias squinted at the holo display. A tiny life form darted between the giant ferns, almost invisible against the bright greenery. "Bring us closer," he commanded. "I want a better look." The shuttle descended slowly, the landing gear brushing softly against the thick undergrowth. As they touched down, a quiet rustle came from the nearby trees. Suddenly, a small figure emerged. It was a child, but not human. Its skin shimmered with soft pearlescent colors, and its eyes were large and round, reflecting both fear and intelligence. It moved cautiously, yet there was a strange urgency in its steps. Elias felt his chest tighten. Something about the creature's small, trembling form sparked a protective instinct he could not ignore. "Mara, stay with the ship," he said, stepping out carefully. "I'm going to check it out." The child looked at him, its eyes widening. Then, without warning, it collapsed to the ground, trembling violently. Elias rushed forward, crouching beside it. The air around the child seemed almost alive, faintly glowing in rhythm with its quickened heartbeat. "What is it?" Mara asked, her voice over the comms tense. "I don't know yet," Elias said, scanning the child with his handheld diagnostic device. "It's injured, probably from one of those native predators. Its energy levels are dangerously low." The small alien whimpered, a soft melodic sound that tugged at Elias's heart. He carefully lifted it, cradling it as one would a human infant. Its skin was cool but fragile under his hands. The child tried to curl into a ball, but Elias's gentle presence seemed to calm it slightly. "We need to get it inside the shuttle," Elias said. "It won't survive out here alone." Once inside, he laid the child on a padded surface and began administering basic medical care. The alien's body responded to the treatment, and its breathing slowly steadied. For hours, Elias observed, noting the subtle changes in its glowing skin and tiny gestures. It was intelligent, aware of its surroundings, and seemed to understand that he was not a threat. By evening, the small creature had begun to relax. It extended a delicate hand toward Elias, touching his arm with curiosity. Elias smiled softly, feeling a connection he could not explain. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I won't let anything hurt you." Mara looked on from the doorway, impressed despite herself. "Captain, we need to consider, what if this is dangerous? We don't even know what species it is. Could be toxic or contagious." Elias shook his head. "We can't just leave it out there. Whatever it is, it's a child. That changes everything." Night fell over Scifi, the shuttle's lights glowing softly in the alien darkness. Outside, the jungle teemed with sounds, chirps, whistles, and something else deeper and more threatening. Elias sat beside the alien child, who had begun to hum a quiet, melodic tune. The sound was strange, almost musical, but comforting in its own way. As he listened, Elias thought of the countless worlds he had explored, the species he had studied, and the dangers he had faced. Never before had he felt such a profound need to protect a single being. Humanity, he realized, had a unique ability, the drive to care for others, even those who were completely different. It was empathy, courage, and patience rolled into one, and right now, that combination was all that could save this small life. The following morning, Elias worked tirelessly to improve the child's condition. He observed its unique physiology, noting that its energy pulses corresponded with its glowing skin patterns. By adjusting the shuttle's environment, temperature, light, and air composition, he created a space that resembled the child's natural habitat. Slowly, the alien regained strength, and its eyes brightened with curiosity. "Look at it," Mara said, peering over the console. "It's intelligent, almost like it's learning from you already." Elias nodded. "It is, and I think it trusts me. That's important. We can't underestimate that." Days passed, and a bond formed. Elias spoke to the child in soft tones, using simple gestures. It began to respond, mimicking his actions and even attempting small words and sounds. Elias learned to recognize patterns in its communication, discovering a strange but understandable language. He named the child Lyra, after the melody of her early hums. One afternoon, while exploring the nearby jungle for safe food sources, Elias and Lyra encountered a group of native predators. They were sleek, four-legged creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Lyra froze in fear, but Elias stood firm. He used his human ingenuity, creating a small distraction with noise and light to divert the predators. Then, he scooped Lyra into his arms and ran, relying on his knowledge of the terrain and quick reflexes. By the time they returned to the shuttle, Lyra clung to him tightly, her trust in him absolute. Elias realized something profound. Humans had survived and thrived in countless environments because of their combination of intelligence, courage, and empathy. These qualities weren't just for survival. They could protect others even across species. But his relief was short-lived. As night fell, Elias detected an unusual energy signature. It was strong, focused, and moving rapidly through the jungle. He recognized the pattern from old records. This was likely a member of Lyra's species. The next morning, a tall, elegant alien emerged at the edge of the clearing. Its skin shimmered with a golden hue, and its eyes were sharp yet filled with emotion. Elias instinctively stepped in front of Lyra. "Protective. You found her," Elias said quietly, unsure if she could understand him. The alien, Lyra's mother, as he would later learn, approached cautiously, her posture both regal and tense. She examined Lyra with a mix of relief and concern. Elias could sense her curiosity, suspicion, and an unfamiliar warmth directed toward him. Though words were impossible between them, Elias understood one thing clearly. His actions had changed the course of Lyra's life, and perhaps even the lives of her people. He had protected her when no one else could, and now, her mother's gaze held a question that would shape everything to come. For the first time, Elias felt the weight of true responsibility. This was no longer about exploration or survival. It was about connection, trust, and the undeniable proof that humanity's greatest strength was its heart. As the sun of Zephora dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the vibrant jungle, Elias made a silent vow. He would protect Lyra no matter the cost. And in that moment, both human and alien understood that this encounter was the beginning of a bond that could bridge worlds. The morning sun of Zephora bathed the jungle in a golden glow, illuminating dew-covered leaves that glistened like tiny gems. Captain Elias Ward stood beside his shuttle, Lyra nestled gently in his arms. The child's mother, a tall and regal alien named Queen Ciara, watched from a short distance. Her golden skin shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes, deep and intelligent, reflected both worry and curiosity. Elias had anticipated this moment. He had saved Lyra, yes, but now he faced a delicate challenge, communicating with a species unlike any human he had ever met. Queen Ciara's gaze was sharp, assessing him in ways that made his skin tingle. Unlike most aliens he had encountered, she did not seem aggressive, yet her presence carried the authority of a ruler. Elias knelt to place Lyra gently on the ground, allowing her to approach her mother. Lyra hesitated, then ran to Ciara, pressing her small body against the queen's legs. Ciara's voice rang softly, melodically, yet he could feel its power. He could not understand her words, but her tone conveyed relief mixed with caution. Taking a deep breath, Elias raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I only wanted to help," he said, speaking slowly and clearly. "I did not harm your child. I only wanted to keep her safe." Ciara's eyes studied him. Then, slowly, she extended a hand toward Lyra, who moved instantly into her mother's embrace. Elias watched, tense yet hopeful. It was clear that she understood his intentions, but understanding was not trust. Over the next hours, Elias tried to communicate in small ways. He used gestures pointing to himself and then to Lyra, hoping Ciara would grasp that he had only protected her child. He offered food from the shuttle, safe and clean, to demonstrate goodwill. To his surprise, Ciara accepted a small piece of nutrient-rich fruit. Observing his movements carefully before eating, Lyra, curious and lively, remained close to Elias, often touching his arm and mimicking the gestures he used. It was a strange but heartwarming sight, the child learning from him while the mother observed, weighing every action. Elias realized then that humans had a special quality. empathy combined with intelligence. It allowed them to connect, not just survive, and that was exactly what Lyra needed now. By midday, Elias had begun to notice more of Lyra's unique abilities. She could sense slight changes in the environment and react almost instantly. For example, when a small bird-like creature swooped near the clearing, Lyra ducked and extended her hand in a strange motion that seemed to control or redirect the creature, keeping it from striking Elias. He marveled at this ability. It was subtle, powerful, and instinctive. Elias decided to demonstrate his respect for Ciara's authority, while also showing her that he could be trusted. He carefully helped Lyra gather some of the fruit from nearby trees, making sure she did not overexert herself. Then he arranged the food neatly on a flat surface, bowing slightly as he offered it to Ciara. The queen examined the offering, then to Elias's relief, she allowed Lyra to eat. "Captain," Mara's voice came over the comms. "We're picking up unusual energy readings from the area around you. Some of the readings resemble the signals Lyra was emitting. Could it be her mother?" "Yes," Elias whispered, watching Ciara. "It's her. But she's not hostile, she's cautious, observant, protective." As the day went on, Elias and Ciara began a tentative dialogue of gestures and expressions. He learned that Ciara respected bravery, careful thinking, and patience. When he approached Lyra to examine her injuries and ensure she was fully healed, Ciara did not intervene aggressively. Instead, she watched closely, her eyes sharp but less threatening than before. Lyra seemed to sense the growing trust between her protector and her mother. She moved freely, exploring the clearing under Elias's careful guidance, yet occasionally looking to Ciara for reassurance. It was a delicate balance, one that Elias understood instinctively. The bond between a child and their parent was strong, even across species later. As Elias helped Lyra practice simple problem-solving exercises using stones and sticks, Ciara approached slowly. Elias froze briefly, unsure of her intentions, but instead of taking Lyra away, Ciara knelt, observing silently. Lyra demonstrated her unique intelligence, arranging stones in patterns Elias had never taught her. She looked to him with a proud smile, and he returned it with encouragement. Ciara's eyes softened slightly. Elias could feel it, an acknowledgement that he had played a positive role in Lyra's life. Yet there was still tension. Trust, especially between species, could not be rushed. Elias understood that patience would be his greatest ally here. By evening, the sun dipped below Zyphora's horizon, and the jungle became alive with glowing insects and the soft calls of nocturnal creatures. Elias had prepared a small area near the shuttle where Lyra could rest safely. He placed her gently on a soft mat and sat beside her, keeping one hand close in case she woke during the night. Ciara remained at a distance, her silhouette outlined against the bioluminescent plants. Elias wondered what she was thinking. Was she planning to reclaim her child immediately? Or was she beginning to understand that humans could act with care, loyalty, and intelligence? Then something unexpected happened. Lyra, half asleep, reached toward Elias and whispered a small sound, a word Elias recognized as her version of his name. He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that went beyond responsibility. It was a connection, a bond that transcended words or species. Ciara stepped closer, her voice a soft melody that Elias could barely understand. He watched her closely, noticing subtle gestures, the tilt of her head, the way she reached out without touching, the careful measurement of distance. She was testing him, observing his reactions. Elias responded with calm respect, showing no fear or aggression. Hours passed. The jungle settled into quiet, punctuated by distant calls of creatures unknown. Elias maintained his vigil, and slowly, Ciara moved closer, her presence no longer threatening. Lyra stirred in her sleep, reaching instinctively for both Elias and her mother. In that moment, Elias realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology or strength alone. It was the ability to form connections, to care deeply, and to act with reason and empathy. These qualities had allowed him to protect Lyra when danger loomed, and now, they were opening a door to understanding between species. The following morning, Elias awoke to find Ciara sitting nearby observing him. She made a small gesture, a simple nod and the extension of a hand toward Lyra. Elias understood immediately. She was offering a tentative acceptance. He stood slowly, bowing slightly, and responded with a gesture of peace. Lyra, sensing the shift in tension, ran to her mother, then back to Elias, weaving a small path of trust between them. Ciara watched, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. "You have shown courage and care," Elias said softly, though he doubted she could fully understand. "I only wanted to keep her safe. That is all." Ciara's head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed almost like acknowledgement. Then she touched Lyra's forehead, and Lyra turned to Elias with a small, glowing smile. It was a moment of connection, a bridge between worlds built by empathy, patience, and courage. Elias knew that challenges lay ahead. Trust between species would not come easily, and there were dangers in the jungle and beyond. But for now he had achieved something extraordinary. The recognition that humans, through kindness and intelligence, could form bonds even in the most alien of circumstances. And as the twin suns of Zephora rose, casting warm light over the jungle, Elias felt a deep certainty. Protecting Lyra was not just an act of duty, it was the beginning of something greater. Something that might change both human and alien lives forever. The bond he had forged today would be tested in the days ahead, but Elias was ready. For the first time in his career, he understood that being human meant more than surviving. It meant caring, teaching, and connecting. And with those gifts, he could protect not just one child, but perhaps build a bridge between two worlds. The jungle of Zephora was alive with sounds, but the atmosphere around the small clearing where Elias stayed with Lyra had changed. There was a quiet tension in the air, one that even the soft wind and glowing plants could not hide. Queen Ciara, Lyra's mother, sat beneath a tall, twisting tree, her golden skin reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. Her eyes were fixed on Elias, who was busy tending to small tasks around the shuttle, preparing food and water for Lyra. Ciara's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She was grateful, immensely grateful, for the human who had protected her child when danger had threatened. Without his courage and quick thinking, Lyra might not have survived, and yet, she could not ignore her instincts as a mother or her responsibilities as a queen. Elias noticed her gaze but chose not to act hurriedly. He had learned that sudden movements or forceful actions could be misunderstood by alien species. Patience was key. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "I will not take her away from you," he said. "I only want to keep her safe. That is all." Ciara tilted her head slightly, the closest thing to a nod she had offered so far. Elias felt a small wave of relief, but he knew the challenge was far from over. Lyra, oblivious to the tension, was busy exploring the clearing, examining strange plants, and occasionally looking back at her mother for reassurance. The next day, the alien queen called Elias over with a series of precise gestures that he had come to recognize as her version of communication. She led him to a quiet spot near a small stream, where the water shimmered with the reflection of Zephora's twin suns. Elias followed carefully, understanding that this meeting carried significance. Ciara's voice was soft and melodic, filled with authority and emotion. Elias could not understand the words, but her tone conveyed both gratitude and unease. He knelt respectfully, showing that he meant no harm. Then he used gestures, pointing to himself, then to Lyra, and finally to his chest. The queen observed, and slowly, he formed a sequence of signs to indicate care, protection, and respect for her authority. For hours they communicated in this manner. Elias learned subtle details about her culture, respect for courage, intelligence, and patience. She tested him repeatedly, observing his reactions to different scenarios, how he handled Lyra's curiosity, how he maintained calm when Lyra stumbled or became frightened. Elias responded with care, showing that humans could act with empathy and reason even under observation. Meanwhile, the political reality of Zephora's society began to surface. Through subtle signs, Elias sensed that not all of Ciara's people agreed with her tolerance of a human presence. There were factions, council members who viewed Elias as a potential threat, an intruder who might disrupt the balance of their civilization. Rumors had already begun circulating, subtle warnings sent through the telepathic channels that Elias could barely perceive. That evening, Elias prepared a small demonstration of human ingenuity. Using a combination of simple technology from his shuttle and natural materials from the jungle, he created a device that purified water from the nearby stream, while also providing nutrients safe for Lyra and other creatures. He presented it to Ciara with careful gestures, showing that his intentions were practical and helpful, not intrusive. Ciara examined the device, her glowing fingers hovering just above the mechanism. Then she looked at Elias, her eyes narrowing slightly as if calculating his character. After a long pause, she allowed Lyra to touch the device, watching carefully. The child interacted with it with excitement and curiosity, and Elias guided her hand gently. Through this act, Elias demonstrated what humans often excelled at, using intelligence and creativity to solve problems and improve lives, without harming or dominating others. Ciara's expression softened slightly. Elias felt a small measure of trust forming, not complete, but enough to allow cautious cooperation. Over the next several days, Elias continued to teach Lyra small lessons, blending simple human logic with gentle guidance. He showed her how to organize collected fruits, how to observe patterns in the jungle to avoid predators, and how to use small tools safely. Lyra absorbed every lesson quickly, and her mind seemed to grow sharper with each passing day. Ciara watched silently, impressed but still unsure. She could see that Lyra enjoyed Elias's company, and that he treated her with care. Yet the queen's maternal instincts pulled in the opposite direction. She wanted to reclaim her child fully, to ensure her safety within the traditional structures of Zypheran society. She understood that trust could not be rushed. One afternoon, Elias noticed subtle changes in Lyra's behavior. She hesitated when Ciara approached, glancing at Elias for reassurance. Her tiny hand clutched his sleeve. He understood immediately. The child's bond with him was strong, stronger than he had anticipated. Elias knelt beside her, offering comfort and warmth without undermining Ciara's authority. Ciara observed this quietly, her thoughts conflicted. Here was a human who had risked everything to protect her child. Yet his presence was creating a new dynamic she had not anticipated. Lyra's trust in him could not be ignored. It was a dilemma she had never faced before, gratitude and admiration clashing with her duty as a mother and leader. As evening approached, Ciara summoned Elias for another private meeting. She led him to a high ridge overlooking the jungle, where the view stretched for miles. Elias could feel the weight of her decision pressing down upon him. He knelt as before, showing respect and patience. Then Ciara made a gesture he had not seen before. She pointed to Lyra, then to him, then swept her hands broadly across the jungle. Elias understood. She was offering a temporary trust, a chance to continue caring for Lyra while observing how he interacted with her child and her people. Elias nodded slowly, careful not to overstep. "I will honor your trust," he said softly, though the queen could not understand his words. His gestures indicated promise, respect, and patience. Ciara's posture relaxed slightly, a small but meaningful sign that the bridge between their worlds had begun to form. That night, Elias sat near Lyra, reflecting on the events of the past days. Humanity had a unique strength, he realized. Empathy, intelligence, and courage combined in a way that could influence not just one life, but an entire society. His actions had earned tentative acceptance from Queen Ciara, and even the skeptical factions within her people could not ignore his character. Lyra leaned against him, humming softly, her trust in him absolute. Elias smiled. Protecting her was no longer just a duty. It had become a responsibility that could shape the future. If humans could demonstrate such qualities consistently, perhaps other civilizations would see the value of cooperation, trust, and empathy. The next morning, Elias observed a subtle shift in Zyphora's jungle. Animals and plants seemed calmer near their clearing. He sensed that Ciara had communicated with her people, explaining or perhaps just signaling that this human could be trusted for now. It was a delicate balance, but one that Elias was willing to maintain. Queen Ciara approached him quietly, gesturing toward the shuttle. Elias followed, knowing that further dialogue and observation were necessary. For hours, they communicated in gestures and tones, each testing the other's understanding and patience. He discovered more about their culture, respect for bravery, careful thinking, and the importance of protecting the young. Every lesson Elias imparted, every act of kindness or intelligence strengthened their fragile trust. By evening, Elias felt a sense of accomplishment, but he also knew the real challenges lay ahead. Political pressures among Ziphora's council would grow and trust could easily be broken. Yet he also understood that his unique human qualities, empathy, courage, patience, and intelligence were tools not only for survival but for connection. Lyra slept peacefully between them, her small body rising and falling with gentle breaths. Elias looked at Ciara, sensing that while the queen was still cautious, she was beginning to see the value humans could bring to her world. He knew that their journey together had only just begun, and in that quiet moment, Elias made a silent vow. No matter the challenges, no matter the doubts or fears, he would continue to protect Lyra. He would honor the trust Queen Ciara had given him and demonstrate the best of humanity, not through force, but through courage, care, and connection. It was a test of patience, wisdom, and heart, and Elias was ready. The jungle of Ziphora was more alive than ever. Strange, luminous plants swayed gently in the breeze, and creatures with glowing eyes moved silently through the undergrowth. Captain Elias Ward stood beside the shuttle, keeping a careful watch on Lyra as she explored the area under Queen Ciara's distant gaze. He had come to understand that the jungle was both beautiful and dangerous, its creatures curious but sometimes unpredictable. For weeks, Elias had been living among the Ziphorans. He had earned a measure of trust from Queen Ciara, though her watchful eyes reminded him that full acceptance would take time. He had also bonded deeply with Lyra, who followed his movements like a shadow, learning from his gestures and mimicking his cautious curiosity. One afternoon, while Elias was teaching Lyra how to safely collect edible plants from the jungle floor, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Leaves rattled violently, and the distant calls of creatures turned into loud, fearful cries. Elias's heart tightened. He had read reports of Ziphora's natural storms, but he had never experienced one firsthand. Now it seemed the jungle itself was alive with danger. "Lyra!" he shouted, scooping her into his arms. The child clung tightly, eyes wide with fear. The wind picked up, carrying heavy rainfall and debris. Elias knew that they had to find shelter immediately, or the storm could be deadly. From a distance, he saw Ciara and other Ziphorans guiding creatures toward safer areas. It was clear that this storm was not just a natural disaster. It was a test of survival for the entire ecosystem. Elias's mind raced. Humans were adaptable, yes, but Ziphora's storms were unlike anything he had encountered. He had to think quickly. He ran with Lyra toward a hollowed cliffside he had discovered earlier. The wind whipped at his face, rain soaking him to the bone. Branches snapped under the storm's force, and large leaves fell like shields from above. Despite the chaos, Elias remained focused. He positioned himself as a barrier, shielding Lyra from falling debris while navigating the treacherous terrain. As they reached the cliffside, Elias noticed small Ziphoran creatures trapped in a nearby tree cavity, panicking in the wind. Without hesitation, he extended his free hand, guiding the creatures toward safety. Lyra, inspired by his actions, followed his example, her small hands gently nudging frightened animals toward secure spots. Once inside the hollowed cliff, Elias set Lyra down and quickly assessed the situation. The storm was intensifying, and the cliff provided only partial protection. He realized that he needed to coordinate a larger rescue effort, not just for Lyra, but for the animals and Ziphorans in danger. Outside, the storm roared like a living force. Trees bent and swayed under the violent wind, and water cascaded down in sheets. Elias took a deep breath and began organizing small teams, using a combination of human problem-solving and Ziphoran instinct. He assigned Lyra simple tasks she could manage safely, holding small lights, guiding creatures, and observing potential hazards. She responded eagerly, demonstrating her intelligence and quick learning once again. Elias's actions were deliberate and calculated. He moved between groups, providing guidance and reassurance. When a large branch fell, threatening a small Ziphoran family, he leapt forward, using his strength and human agility to shift the branch just enough to create a safe path. Lyra watched wide-eyed as he worked calmly despite the danger surrounding them. Queen Ciara observed from a distance, her golden skin glowing faintly in the storm's dim light. She had doubts about trusting a human, yet here he was demonstrating courage, intelligence, and compassion under extreme conditions. Elias was not just surviving. He was protecting lives, bridging the gap between species with actions, not words. Hours passed. The storm showed no sign of slowing, yet Elias's coordination began to pay off. Small groups of Zifferans and creatures were guided into safer zones. Lyra assisted where she could, her trust in Elias evident. The bond they shared had become a source of strength, not just for them, but for the jungle's inhabitants as well. At one point, a flash of lightning struck a nearby tree, causing it to collapse toward a cluster of small Zifforans. Elias sprinted forward, shouting warnings while simultaneously calculating the fastest route to save them. He used his human ingenuity, leveraging fallen branches as levers and creating temporary shields from debris. The Zifforans followed his lead, and together they managed to avoid disaster. After the storm's peak passed, Elias took a moment to catch his breath. He looked around at the jungle, the creatures and the Zifforans he had helped protect. Lyra hugged his leg, her small form trembling from fear and excitement. Elias smiled softly, feeling the weight of the storm and the responsibility he had carried. He had proven, not just to himself, but to an entire alien world, that humans could act with courage, intelligence, and unwavering care. Ciara approached cautiously. Her eyes met Elias's, filled with a mixture of awe and contemplation. She stepped closer, her movements deliberate and calm. She reached out toward Lyra, then toward Elias, a subtle but powerful gesture. Elias understood immediately. She was acknowledging his loyalty and skill, recognizing the value of his actions even beyond the safety of her child. The Queen's telepathic aura brushed against Elias's mind, a wave of thought and emotion he could sense but not fully interpret. Gratitude, respect, and something deeper, perhaps admiration, flowed through it. Elias bowed slightly, careful not to appear threatening. Words were unnecessary. His deeds had spoken louder than language ever could. Over the next days, the jungle began to recover from the storm. Elias assisted with rebuilding shelters, relocating creatures to safer areas, and ensuring that Lyra and other young Zifforans were protected. His actions drew the attention of more council members, some of whom had been skeptical of human presence. They watched in silence as he solved problems, coordinated rescue efforts, and demonstrated an unmatched combination of empathy and intelligence. Lyra thrived under his guidance. She learned new techniques for assessing danger, identifying safe areas, and assisting with simple tasks. Her trust in Elias was unwavering, and her abilities continued to astonish him. She seemed to understand not only his gestures but the intent behind them, and she responded with creativity and care. Queen Ciara observed quietly, gradually realizing that Elias's presence was not a threat. Instead, he was a protector, a teacher, and a bridge between two species. His loyalty to Lyra, combined with his willingness to aid the jungle's inhabitants, showed qualities that were rare even among her own people. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the horizon, Elias stood at the cliff's edge, looking out over the recovering jungle. Lyra climbed onto a rock beside him, her small hand resting in his. Shara approached, silent but close enough that Elias felt her watchful presence. "You have shown strength and wisdom," he said softly, though the Queen could not understand his words. He let his gestures convey meaning, respect, gratitude, and commitment. Lyra looked at him with admiration, and Ciara's gaze softened. It was then that Elias realized something extraordinary. Humanity's greatest strengths, empathy, courage, and intelligence could influence even the most alien of worlds. His actions had earned trust, demonstrated loyalty, and shown that humans were capable of bridging divides through compassion and skill. As night fell, Elias prepared a small area for rest, ensuring that Lyra was safe and comfortable. The Queen watched silently, acknowledging the bond that had formed between human and child. Elias knew that the challenges of Ziphora were far from over, but he also understood that he had proven something essential. Humans, through courage, intellect, and care, could earn the respect and trust of entirely alien civilizations. And in that quiet moment, with the jungle settling around them, Elias made a silent vow. No matter what trials lay ahead, he would continue to protect Lyra, aid her people, and demonstrate the best of humanity. For he had learned that loyalty and compassion were the bridges that could connect worlds, and that one human's actions could create hope across the stars. The jungle of Ziphora was calm under the soft light of the twin suns. The storm from the previous days had passed, leaving the plants refreshed and the creatures moving cautiously yet with renewed energy. Captain Elias Ward stood on a small ridge overlooking the clearing. Lyra beside him, her small hand clutching his. The child had grown stronger and more confident under his care, her bright eyes shining with curiosity and joy. Queen Ciara approached slowly, her golden skin glowing faintly in the warm light. Elias turned to face her, bowing slightly in respect. The queen's gaze was steady, thoughtful, and yet there was an unusual warmth there, a recognition of what humanity could bring to her world. "You have done more than protect her," Elias said softly, his voice carrying sincerity. Though she could not understand his words fully, the tone combined with gestures conveyed his meaning. "You have trusted me, and I have learned from your people as much as I have taught. I only wish to honor that trust." Ciara stepped closer, watching Lyra carefully. The child ran ahead briefly, then returned, pressing herself against both of them in a gesture that seemed to acknowledge the bond formed over weeks of care and shared experiences. Elias smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and the warmth of their trust. It had not been an easy journey. From the first moment he had found Lyra injured and alone, he had faced countless challenges, navigating an alien jungle, understanding an entirely new species, and earning the cautious respect of a queen whose instincts and responsibilities were unlike his own. But through patience, intelligence, and empathy, he had built bridges between human and alien, between fear and trust, between two worlds that had never truly understood each other. In the days following the storm, Ciara had observed Elias carefully. His actions had proven that humans could act with courage, intelligence, and care, even in the most unpredictable circumstances. He had saved lives, coordinated rescue efforts, and demonstrated that his loyalty was unwavering. Slowly, factions within her people who had been skeptical of him began to accept his presence. They could not deny the results. Lyra was safe. The young and vulnerable of the jungle were protected, and humans had demonstrated the ability to collaborate, adapt, and lead without seeking dominance. As Elias and Lyra walked back toward the clearing, he noticed subtle signs of respect from the surrounding Zephorans. Creatures and beings alike seemed calmer, almost as if they sensed the harmony that had developed between human and alien. It was a small but meaningful indication. Trust and understanding could ripple through even the most alien environments, and one human's actions could influence many lives. Ciara gestured for Elias to kneel beside her. He obeyed, careful to show humility and respect. Then she extended her hand toward him, a formal yet symbolic gesture. Elias reached out and accepted it, understanding immediately. She was offering him a choice, an invitation. He looked at Lyra, who smiled and clutched his hand tightly. Her small face reflected hope and trust, and Elias realized that the decision before him was larger than any mission he had ever undertaken. He could return to Earth, continue his life among humans, and report the findings of this extraordinary world. Or he could remain here, living among the Zephyrans, guiding Lyra as her protector, teacher, and friend, and continuing the work he had begun in bridging their worlds. The weight of the decision pressed on him, yet he felt a sense of clarity. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology or power alone. It was the ability to care, to reason, and to act with integrity. His place, he realized, was where those qualities could make the greatest difference. And here, among the jungles, creatures, and people of Zephora, he could do just that. Elias glanced at Ciara, then at Lyra, and finally looked out over the jungle. His mind replayed the moments that had led to this point. Rescuing Lyra from danger, learning her language, guiding her safely, and proving to her mother and herself that humans were capable of extraordinary compassion and courage. Each action had strengthened the bond between them and shown that humanity's unique qualities were a gift to any world willing to accept them. He stood slowly, taking a deep breath. "I will stay," he said softly, using gestures to convey his meaning. "I will protect Lyra, and I will help your people as best I can. That is my choice." Ciara's eyes softened. She extended her arms, and Lyra ran to her mother first, then back to Elias, weaving the bond between them. The Queen's approval was subtle but unmistakable. He had passed the ultimate test not through words, but through actions that proved loyalty, intelligence, and care. The days that followed were filled with both joy and purpose. Elias helped rebuild areas of the jungle damaged by the storm, creating safe zones for young Zephyrans and animals alike. He guided Lyra in learning skills that were both human and Zephoran, blending knowledge from two worlds to create understanding. Each success brought quiet admiration from the queen and her people, further solidifying the fragile trust that had once seemed impossible. As weeks turned into months, Elias became a part of Zephoran life. He learned their customs, respected their traditions, and demonstrated the best of humanity at every step. Lyra flourished under his care, her intelligence and empathy growing stronger each day. And Queen Ciara, once cautious and uncertain, came to value the human presence not only as a protector of her child, but as a symbol of what humans could offer: courage, wisdom, and compassion that crossed the boundaries of species. One evening, as the twin suns set in brilliant hues of orange and violet, Elias stood at the edge of a cliff looking out over the jungle. Lyra climbed onto his shoulders giggling, and pointed to distant lights where Zephoran homes glowed softly. Elias felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had chosen a life of responsibility and care, but he had gained something far greater: a connection that bridged worlds, a family that transcended species, and the chance to demonstrate humanity at its best. Queen Ciara approached silently, her presence steady and reassuring. Elias turned, offering a small bow, and she inclined her head in acknowledgement. No words were needed. The mutual understanding between them was clear. Humans and Zephyrans could coexist, learn from each other, and grow stronger together. Lyra, perched on his shoulders, laughed as a soft breeze brushed through her hair. Elias smiled, feeling warmth and pride. This was the reward for courage, patience, and empathy, the ability to protect, teach, and inspire. Humanity had proven its worth not through domination or fear, but through care, intelligence, and heart. The stars began to appear in Zephora's sky, tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. Elias looked up, imagining the vastness of the universe and the countless worlds waiting to be discovered. He thought of Earth, of his crew, and of the humans he had left behind, and yet he felt at home here, among beings who had once seemed so alien but now were family. He realized then that humans had a rare gift: the ability to adapt, understand, and form bonds where none seemed possible. It was this quality that had saved Lyra, earned Ciara's trust, and shown that humanity could shine brightly even in the most distant corners of the galaxy. Lyra leaned down and whispered a small sound, a human word she had learned from him. "Friend," Elias laughed softly, hugging her close. It was the perfect word, simple but powerful, and as he stood there, with the jungle stretching endlessly before him and the stars beginning to shine above, he understood that he had found a home, a purpose, and a bond that would last far longer than any journey through the stars. Queen Ciara placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, her gesture gentle but firm. He felt the full weight of trust and respect, a recognition that he had chosen wisely and acted bravely. He looked at her, at Lyra, and then at the jungle below, understanding that this was not an ending. It was a beginning for Lyra, who would grow strong and wise under the guidance of a human who had risked everything to protect her. A beginning for Elias, who had discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not in tools or weapons, but in courage, empathy, and the ability to connect across worlds. And a beginning for Zephora, a world that had learned that trust and understanding could bridge even the most alien divides. As night fully settled, Elias, Lyra, and Queen Ciara stood together, watching the stars. The universe was vast and mysterious, but humanity had shown that even in the farthest reaches, hope, courage, and kindness could shine brightly. And with that realization, Elias knew that he had truly found his place among the stars, among aliens, and among friends who had become family. The jungle whispered around them, the creatures calm and curious, and the twin suns of Zephora faded completely, leaving a sky full of light and possibility. Elias had chosen to stay, to protect, and to connect. And in doing so, he had shown the best of humanity, not in words, but in every courageous and compassionate action he had taken. It was a new beginning for all.